All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Floyd Mayweather Jr. sending a message to Terence Crawford, which is, if you want this ERROL Spence Jr. fight, I will get it done for you. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. In this video, we're going to talk about what Floyd Mayweather Jr.'s message was to Terence Crawford about the ERROL Spence Jr. fight. But before I get into that, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a longtime subscriber or a recent subscriber, thank you so much for your support on the channel. Also, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. We do them pretty much every day, live streams 6 days a week. So make sure you guys check us out. Great boxing community. Okay, so we had a really big fight this weekend. ERROL Spence Jr. just cleaned up his side of the street against Yordenis Ugas, giving him the WBA, the WBC, and the IBF belt. You have Terence Crawford, who has the WBO belt and who is now poised to fight ERROL Spence Jr. for an undisputed fight at 147 pounds. Floyd Mayweather Jr., for his part, came out and said that he still wants to sign Terence Crawford to a deal because he believes he is the guy that can get that fight over the line with the PBC, with Showtime, or what have you, right? Now, this is something that Floyd Mayweather Jr. has been saying for a while. And during the entire lead up into this fight with ERROL Spence Jr., most people were pretty much saying that the money was not right for the fight between the two. And for example, you had Tim Smith, who was the director of communications for the PBC, said that he himself, speaking for himself, would not even make an offer to Terence Crawford for the fight because the fight has not because Terence Crawford would want a lot more money than they think that they would be able to offer him, because his pay-per-view buys and all of that stuff really did not, haven't been that successful. And, he really hadn't done enough, to build himself up as a fighter, or rather the people that he was with before who were top ranked had not done enough to build, ERROL Spence Jr., Terence Crawford into a really, really big name fighter to make it where, the money was there to get paid for, for both fighters in that fight. Now, with Floyd Mayweather Jr. still insisting that he would like to sign Terence Crawford to make the fight, obviously, if Floyd Mayweather Jr. feels like he can invest in the fight and he's willing to put up money for the fight, Showtime's willing to put up money for the guaranteed fight for the fight, and Terence Crawford is willing to, find a deal that's acceptable to him, then I don't see why there would be any worries about making the fight. However, I will say this, and this is just my feeling on the matter. I don't think Terence Crawford should need to sign with Floyd Mayweather Jr. at this point to make it happen. Up until ERROL Spence Jr. beat Yordenis Ugas, I was of the feeling that, him signing with the PBC, taking a preliminary fight with the PBC and all of that stuff would maybe a good move to help, get, so the fight could be sold more and give, Terence a good opportunity to be on a pay-per-view fight or whatever before that. But I feel now, man, having seen, the crowd that was there for ERROL Spence Jr., all of the buzz about the fight with ERROL and Yordenis Ugas, and the fact that ERROL Spence Jr. called out Terence Crawford after the fight and said, look, there's only one fight that I want to fight next, that fight should, just on the strength of the energy that is generating right now, should be able to make that fight without having Terence Crawford necessarily having to sign a multi-fight deal with, with the PBC or with Floyd Mayweather Jr. or any of that. Should not have to be the case. There should be enough money in that fight if the networks are interested in and are willing to put the money out there. Now, for the only network that I've heard speak about it is Showtime with Steven Espinoza, who, and his take on it was that the fight is more realistic now than it was before. But I haven't heard him talk after the fight with ERROL Spence Jr. and Yordenis Ugas. My feeling is, though, that once the glow of this fight goes away and people sit down and they start planning and negotiating, like for example, Errol Spence Jr. said that his people are going to go sit down and talk to Terence Crawford's people to see if they can work out a deal. What I'm hoping is that after the kind of afterglow of this fight goes away, that, it doesn't go right back to that type of conversation and saying, well, is it worth the financial risk? I think that's also going to have to do with how well Errol Spence and Terence Crawford did on pay-per-view. I'm sure that there's going to be a bunch of Errol Spence Jr. and I consider the people to be Errol Spence Jr. haters that do this. They're going to come out 2 days later and pretty much call the pay-per-view a flop. You already have people out there talking about how Errol Spence Jr. only sold 40,000 tickets in Dallas for the Yordenis Ugas fight, as if there's anybody other than Canelo Alvarez is selling 40,000 tickets selling 40,000 tickets in a stadium. But I would also like to say on that note that I've heard numbers of 43,000, I've heard 39,000, but with Texas, the state of Texas, they are definitely going to release the number of tickets sold, all that stuff. That is going to be public information. The pay-per-view numbers are not necessarily going to be public information, but the gate is going to be public information. And the first time that Errol's fought in Dallas Stadium against Mikey Garcia, they sold roughly 43,000 tickets or 46,000 tickets. And there are a whole lot of people out there claiming that the reason that there was that many people there was really Mikey Garcia. It wasn't Errol Spence Jr., even though it makes no sense. Errol Spence Jr. is the guy from Dallas. He's the guy from Texas. He's the champion. He's the guy that was doing that. He was the guy that was making that fight a pay-per-view. Mikey Garcia wasn't fighting on pay-per-view, and Errol fought on pay-per-view after that fight, but just didn't want to give him credit. So there will be, I say that to say that there will be people who are out there pressing, out there trying to make the fight like Errol Spence Jr. and Yordenis Ugas was some flop, and maybe messing with, trying to mess with, the excitement and the energy that would build around that fight. But anyway it cuts it. I don't think that Terence Crawford should have to sign a multi-fight deal with the PBC. However, I would not count out their desire to do that because of the fact that there's so much riding on the fight. All four belts, the entirety of the welterweight division rests upon that fight. And if they don't have guarantees around what Terence Crawford would do next, and they feel like that money may be a little bit questionable about how much it would earn, I wouldn't be surprised if the powers that be stepped in the middle of that and was like, nah, let's put that off. Let's not try to do that. Now, if Floyd Mayweather Jr. was somebody that was signing a multi-fight deal with Terence Crawford, and I don't care what anybody says, Floyd Mayweather Jr. has got to be very influential with the PBC and with Al Heyman and with Showtime. Has to have influence over there. That that may either hold up the fight or it could help make the fight. But we are not out of the woods as far as making this fight. Errol Spence Jr. said he wants it. He's very, very vocal about it. Terence Crawford, did a little shake hand emoji like he's ready to go. But, the network still have to sign on and the PBC has to sign on in order to get that fight, over the line. So anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.